I want you to get together.
Hello everyone. Now in this video I just want to recap some things which I discussed at length in a presentation on my most recent Truth or Therapy session. In this one I cover an entity known as a Wandjina in the Western tribes of Australia, I believe. Now, these people in Australia, these Aborigines, have a very trippy worldview in regards to their ancient past. They have something what's called a dream time. Now, a dream time is, as I explained in that video, which I'm going to quickly summarise here, is a Western phrase to describe how the Aboriginals describe the antediluvian land before time period. They consider it something called dream time, and this was a very psychedelic age with a lot of spiritual beings everywhere creating creation, basically. And they reference something called a rainbow serpent a lot, and they believe serpents played a huge role in the creation of mountains and water holes, things like that. And what they also mention in detail is this entity known as a Wandjina. Now, this is very prevalent to bring up for this series because just at a first glance, looking at these things, you can see they look just like a clown. And I quickly made an image here for a thumbnail to show what I'm trying to say. So at a cursory glance, you know, this thing here has a red nose, large glowing eyes, and a bright big red halo that looks like the afro of a clown with white skin. So this one's pretty on the nose, you know, and I couldn't leave this out of the main series for the NEPHILIM look like clowns. But again, if you want a more detailed overview of what I'm talking about here, go to the Truth or Therapy sessions, the most recent one. You'll see the thumbnail has this right here, and I go into detail explaining this one thoroughly. But again, just a quick overview, you know, I'll read the quick Wikipedia breakdown of what these things are. But they're also basically known as cloud and rain spirits from the Australian Aboriginal mythology. They're depicted prominently in rock art in Australia. Some of the artwork in the Kimberley region of the Western Australia dates back to approximately 4,000 years ago. It's said that these are part of the Dreamtime legends. It says that the Wandjina created the landscape and its inhabitants and continue to have influence over both. These spirits found the place they would die. They painted their image on cave walls and entered a nearby waterhole. These paintings were then refreshed by Aboriginals as a method of regenerating life force. Wandjina can punish those who break the law with floods, lightning, and cyclones. So you'll find that the Wandjina is actually linked with the rainbow serpent deeply. So the rainbow serpent goes by many names to many tribes and is worshipped in many different ways, but it's usually known as the Wunga or the Younger with a J. It's a variant of the rainbow serpent created being belief, while the Wandjina are local spirits attached to places and associated with particular clans. Some local expressions use the two terms interchangeably. The Wunga is more diffuse life force animating and underlying the particular manifestations of its power, and that find expression in all species of things, including the Wandjina. One facet of Wunga is embodied in a rock python known as Wandjad. So basically these things are linked heavily with serpent worship. So these people worship serpentine rainbow serpents that created all life and were worshipped as gods within the region. And they had these human-like entities which were also heavily created by or influenced by the serpent gods. So what we're describing is the NEPHILIM offspring of fallen angels, if you want to apply the biblical lens over this story. As far as I'm concerned, it's the same thing. And these entities, I read another story which is in the Truth or Therapy sessions, but basically these things were left behind once the serpent gods disappeared back into heaven and they ruled over the people. And as much as they are renowned as gods or spirits, it says here, you know, they would find the place that they would die and then paint their image on the cave walls. So these are actually physical living beings who died physically, you know. And before they died, they did a self-portrait on the caves. So looking over some of these images, I mean, I don't think you could really get more clown-like. It's extremely on the nose, including the outfits these things are often depicted as wearing. So here's one example. Here's another. And what they're wearing is a red and white polka dot suit with a circular button, a white collar with white face paint and a red nose. Is that really much different than the typical clown costume? You know, red with white polka dots, a white collar with red hair and clown makeup. You know, obviously this one has multicolored hair. Is that a stretch too far, really? I don't think so. I think we've got another incredibly linked piece of imagery here. So, I mean, I don't even know how it could be so similar. You know, it's hard to understand really. But other than perhaps traveling Freemasons of the day, the people who invented the image of a modern day clown, as I explained in one of my earlier videos, perhaps they saw these representations and brought them back to the West and incorporated this motif into their own image that they call the clown in order to venerate the Nephilim gods that they worship. Maybe they just picked up this particular style and brought it back to the West and, again, added it to the caricature they created, called a Western clown. That's the only way I can consider this happening somehow. But it's just absolutely uncanny how the uniform and the look is identical to this ancient being and our modern Western representation of a typical circus clown. It's too much. I couldn't not make a video about this for the main series. But again, guys, if you want more talk about this particular topic, go to the live show. So moving on, I was sent some fan mail, funnily enough, from Canada. And this individual, a long-time subscriber of mine, sent me a leaflet for the Haida people. And basically, it was trying to sell a tour of the Guahai Islands, where this tribe originated from. Here you can see on the map where it is. It's just off the coast of the western provinces of Canada. And yeah, this clan's an interesting one, and I think I'd like to share with you their story. It's actually a very sad story, to be honest. But you'll find that their totem poles, which were on this leaflet, just depict such Nephilim-esque features, which I have mentioned briefly in another video. But it's definitely worth another pass just to emphasize the entities these things represent in their artwork, you know. Again, the white skin, large red mouth, tongue sticking out like a gorgon. They even had the red nose here, surrounded by little people, so maybe perhaps giant monsters surrounded by normal-sized humans. And they do have their own descriptions of what they're actually representing here to be mainly animal gods, of a form of a beaver and a bear and a frog and an eagle and a raven and a crow. But you just look at their stylistic choice, and I think you find it fits into the theme quite well. But just a brief overview here, very quickly, of this particular tribe. Now, it says that this tribe is actually incredibly ancient. They date them back with incredible numbers of being, you know, perhaps 12,000 years old, maybe even older. This tribe is known for their craftsmanship and trading skills, and they were a seafaring tribe. It said that they frequently carried out raids and even practiced slavery. They've been compared to the Vikings of the region, very similar in nature. The Haida Gwaii, the Haida government, consists of a matrix of national and regional hereditary, legislative and executive bodies, including the hereditary chief council. So there's many people within the region, within these tribes, and they all have their own kind of law, or did. It says these people kind of were around during the Ice Age and survived the Ice Age time and lived through to the modern age. It's also explained that when they came in contact with colonialism in the Western world, they first did trade with them, and then before they knew it, unfortunately, many of them contracted smallpox and died. as you can see here in 1862. It says it believed they had a population of about 6,000, and then before they knew it, after the smallpox had taken hold, they were down to about 800. They were decimated, absolutely decimated. The population collapsed due to this epidemic, and everything just stopped for them, and they basically became integrated into Western culture, and many of the children were taken to schools, Canadian schools of the time, British Canadian schools, and kind of their culture was kind of destroyed because of it. It's been revived recently by remnants of the tribes, and now this area is a UNESCO site. Basically, it's a protected site, and modern artists who claim heritage back to these people have been trying to recreate the totem poles and bring them back. And it's interesting, their culture, these totem poles are supposed to tell stories of their history, basically, and every house kind of had one. Here's a very old photo from 1878 of a particular area, and as you can see in this one, you've got this particular being on this totem pole to the left with two horns sticking out. Again, they put these on their houses to tell stories about the family's history and their clan and where they come from. If we go a bit further into it, you can get the Haida mythology here. And it's only a very short passage in here, really. There's not much information on this, because a lot of it was lost due to oral tradition and was always quite occulted and hidden. But basically, they have an animistic religion. It's a nature religion, drawing on the natural world, seasonal patterns, events, and objects. But basically, for what I can gather, is there are innumerable Haida supernatural beings. They have a prominent animal crest, wind direction, and legendary ancestors. So, if you think of legendary ancestors, that makes me think again of the men of renown, referencing the Bible, and the NEPHILIM. Now, while documenting Haida belief as part of the Jessup North Pacific expedition, recorded that the highest being of all in the Haida mythology, and the one who gave power to all the other beings, was translated to the power of the shining heavens. Some had the ability to transform between animal and human forms, while others do not. In the art, creatures can sometimes be found with anthropomorphic features, especially human faces, inside or as part of their bodies, donating this transformative ability. So a lot of their ancient gods were shape-shifting beings that could meld between human and animal, or were maybe even something in between. So animal-like features with human-like features melded together. As I've mentioned in my series at great length, I do believe there were genetically modified humans around, and entities who were half human, half serpent, half human, half bird. Even the sirens are a very good example of half bird, half human hybrids. The satyrs are a good example of half man, half animal, half beast. We've got centaurs, the tauruses. There's plenty of half human, half animal hybrids around. But what's interesting is that these powers were given to beings from the power of the shining heavens. So I think this is a reference, again, applying the biblical lens over these stories and the biblical history of fallen angels mixing with these people and making them worship them. And none of the characters are more so analogous to this idea of a fallen angel than one of the raven within the Haida mythology. So the raven is a central character, and he is, for many of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, a very common entity. He's frequently described as a trickster. The Haidas believe that Raven to be a complex reflection of one's own self. Raven can be a magician, a transformer, a potent creative force, a ravenous debaucher, but always a cultural hero. He is responsible for creating Haida Gwaii, releasing the sun from its tiny box and making the stars and the moon. In one story, he released the first humans from a cockle shell on the beach. In another story, he brought the first humans up out of the ground because he needed to fill up a party he was throwing. Raven stories on one level teach listeners how to live a good life, but usually by counter-example. Raven has been described as the greediest, most lecherous and mischievous creature known to the Haida. But at the same time, Raven often helps humans in our encounters with other supernatural beings. Raven acquired such things as freshwater, salmon, and the house for humans. It was noted that Raven never actually created anything. He made the world by stealing, exchanging, redistributing, and generally moving things around. Now, isn't that interesting? This is talking, I believe, of a particular fallen angel. I don't know which one, but he basically came down to humans. He was a vicious trickster person who was said to be very greedy and lecherous and mischievous and sexually ravenous. And people worshipped him, basically, as a god, and told myths and legends about his grand tales and the things he did throughout his life. The stories vary from tribe to tribe, but they always basically revolve around this raven in some way, stealing things from the big gods and giving it to humans. I've heard other stories, doing my research here, about even stealing fire, stealing the sun, and bringing it to humans. And it's analogous to the story of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods and giving it to humans, And is this basically just an analogy for Lucifer, the light bringer, who, from the Gnostic perspective, are very similar to this story, created human beings as they are today, essentially, takes credit for making human beings the enlightened things they are currently, claims to be their creator because it was Lucifer who convinced humanity that they were trapped in the Garden of Eden by a cruel and vindictive god who wants to keep them stupid and on a lower level. All they need to do is just partake of the knowledge of good and evil, and they will be like gods, and it sounds like a very similar story of, stealing the sun and giving it to humans type of thing. It's fire represents knowledge most of the time. So yeah, this raven character, a lecherous and mischievous creature. Fascinating. And they also have the other gods as well, and they have the death gods of Taxet and Tyr. Taxet rules violent death, while Tyr rules peaceful death. They're a shamanistic culture, so they have shamans and witch doctors who are believed to be the only ones who can commune with the spirits in order to provide healing and wisdom to the tribe. Not that dissimilar from all the other cultures around the world and every other continent who have a shamanistic, ritualistic culture. So what is interesting, looking through this, here's how the raven brought light to the world. So according to this legend, in the beginning the world was in total darkness. The raven, who had existed from the beginning of time, was tired of groping about and bumping into things in the dark. Eventually the raven came upon the home of an old man who lived alone with his daughter. Through his slyness, the raven learned that the old man had a great treasure. This was all the light in the universe, contained in a tiny box, concealed within many boxes. At once, the raven vowed to steal the light. So remember what I mentioned earlier. The old man, I think, is supposed to represent God, his great treasure, his knowledge and wisdom, and the knowledge of creation and how to be like God, so the light in the universe. And the raven vowed to steal the light. Lucifer, the light bringer, the light bearer, as Lucifer literally means, is the one who supposedly, wanted to be like God himself. He thought and thought, did the raven, and finally came up with a plan. He waited until the old man's daughter came to the river to gather water. So stop, that could be an analogy for humanity. God's daughter being humans, his creation, his child, his children. Then the raven changed himself into a single hemlock's needle and dropped himself into the river, just as the girl was dipping her water basket into the river. As she drank from the basket, she swallowed the needle, so humanity ate or swallowed something akin to this being, this not dissimilar from eating an apple, let's say. But as a result of ingesting this essence of rebellion, let's call it, this hemlock needle, it slipped and slithered down into her belly, where the raven transformed himself again. So it's kind of like a form of possession we're talking about here as well. This time into a tiny human. So we're also getting something similar here to angels mixing themselves with humans. So this is akin to the NEPHILIM story as well. After sleeping and growing there for a very long time, at last the raven emerged into the world once more, this time as a human infant, even though he had a rather strange appearance. The raven's grandfather loved him. So this raven has now birthed himself through a human somehow, and is now like a mix between angel and human. Has an odd appearance. But the man still loved his child regardless, his grandchild, because it came out of his daughter's belly or womb, shall we say. The old man threatened dire punishment if he ever touched the precious treasure box. So again, this is God warning his angels, you don't mess with the nature of reality. I am God. I know how to deal with this stuff. You don't go around messing with it. Nonetheless, the raven child begged and begged, and he was allowed to hold the light for just a moment. Now, this, I think, could be analogous to the Watchers, because I hear that the Watchers who came down to Earth to preside over humanity and make sure, we were okay, they asked to be here. They asked God, can we please come down to Earth and help humanity stay righteous? And along the way, they got corrupt and messed up big time, And I find it interesting that, the raven child begged and begged the old man to be allowed to hold the light for a moment. And the old man did. The old man allowed the raven to see the light, I suppose, or be as God in this respect. And these Watchers were ruling over humanity, They were given a chance to be as gods over humanity. And what did they do? They raped the women and created giants. And in this story, the old man yielded, lifted from the box a warm and glowing light sphere, which he threw at his grandson, the raven. And the light moved towards him. The human child transformed into a gigantic black shadowy bird form, wings spread ready for flight, and the beak opened in anticipation. As the beautiful ball of light reached him, the raven captured it in his beak. Moving his powerful wings, he burst through the smoke hole in the roof of the house and escaped into the darkness with his stolen treasure. That is how light came into the universe. So this is a lot of stories kind of mashed into one kind of metaphorical analogy. We've got things about the Watchers coming down to rule over mankind and failing miserably. And we've got Lucifer stealing the knowledge or the light of the universe of how to be as God and bringing it to humanity. We've got the raven, or a flying angelic being with great immense power, ruling over the peoples or attempting to be as God with stolen stuff. We have a being here that can't create anything himself, can only redistribute, exchange, move things around, and steal. And the angels don't have the power of creation. All they can do is manipulate what's already here, what God has created, and convince people that they are the ones who did it. All they can do is steal, kill, lie, and destroy. And it's all there in this Haida mythology. I just thought it was fascinating, and there are people out there who have written books about the magical beings of the Haida Gwaii, and I've not bought the book, but it's basically a book for children, what you can see here. And I can't get a glimpse of the book exactly, but what I do have down here is hints as to what she's talking about. So there's the thrush woman, the cedar sister, the white raven bringing light to the world. So the black dark raven in that story is now depicted as a light being in the children's book instead. Then we've got like a butterfly woman, an animal hybrid, a lady in the moon, so a moon goddess, and stuff about flowers here and herbs. And it shows here images of all the women around the island, or the goddesses of each individual locale on this island. And this is just the same as the sirens. The women who mated with fallen angels and created the Nephilim offspring, they were said to become sirens, and they were basically nature goddesses over specific locales of areas, so forests, lakes, rivers, streams, glens, woods, all sorts of things, and here they are scattered all over this island as well. And I think that's all these represents. These are women who have been given divine power as a reward, I assume, rather than a punishment from the fallen angels who they allowed to mate with them, you know. So it's a similar story found all over the world, you know, and this idea of sirens seems to be very similar in this far away, tucked away corner of the world. Now, there are modern artists today, like I said, are trying to reinvigorate this lost culture. And we have artists who create artwork basically in the exact same style as they find them. So if we look at these images here, these are all decayed now and gone. They don't really exist anymore. These totem poles look something like this, these villages once did, you know, and they were in the front of people's houses, and each totem told a story of the heritage of each family, you know. And this is a painting rendition of what it probably did look like. Here's another painting rendition of what this looks like. But the state of this place now is nothing like this. These totem poles are decayed. They're rotting. They're almost non-existent. They've fallen. They are gone. And the upkeep was gone. The tribe was decimated. There was no one around to maintain any of this or make new ones. Only till recently has it been renovated and brought back to the forefront again. And people have recreated from what they've found in these ancient poles these new ones, which are supposed to be true representations of what people used to create. So what we have today is a facsimile of something that once was. A glimpse into an ancient culture that was around for so long, you know, that they've put hints into their artwork of the type of beings that were wandering around at the time. And it was these monstrous half-human, half-animal hybrid entities that ruled with trickster ability. You know, and what they created here was a vindictive, cruel, enslaving, warlike, Viking-like culture dedicated to the worship of these spirits, these nature spirits. Frida de Sing here is another one a modern woman who has heritage to this tribe, who makes artwork based on what she's found. Here's a very Nephilim-esque looking recreation in the mask of the Haida style. And then Bill Reed is one of the biggest ones. He's the one who's kind of going out there, really trying to bring the culture back. He's recreated a lot of the totem poles and wood carving. It's something he picked up from his great-grandfather and carried on. Yeah, interesting. So what was sent to me by one of these fans was actually one of these coins you see here. And what's on the coin is Bill Reed's artwork. You know, so I've got one of these now in my own collection. And it's fascinating, you know. What we have now are the Nephilim spirits on the money. But what this is supposed to be is a beaver. But beavers don't have human-like features like this. This is a meld between a human-animal hybrid, as we mentioned earlier. Fascinating. But yeah, the Gorgon is now on the money. You know, it's just interesting. So definitely worth sharing there. If we look at some more images of these Haida people's work, so you know, these are like I said, these are the decaying totems which have been kind of recreated by modern artists, like we just saw there. But fascinating. Truly fascinating. So I was reading some stories about these. If you look at these images, you've got these characters on top of these totem poles with the very tall top hats, which is interesting. You know, these hats that go up into the sky. And it was said from ancient stories that these people would do ritualistic dances to appease the spirits, or peace dances or war dances. And during these rituals, the one doing the dance would have this hat, and this hat would basically get taller and taller as they did the dance. And between the ridges on the hat, as you can see here, there are lines going up the top hats. Between the ridges of these hats, light would come out, and basically spirits would come out. And that's what they were representing, a form of channeling of spirit energy. That's what these hats were used for in these rituals. So I find it interesting, you know, what we know about the Hat Man, especially, and that these people, this random tribe in the northwest of the Americas, you know, have this top hat as an essential part of their demon spirit summoning rituals, shall we say. And, they say that these are representations of animals like bears and frogs and stuff, but what kind of animal has these two sharp protruding horns sticking out of the middle of its forehead, as you can see right here in the center of the screen? A lot of them say it's representing the eagle and the raven, because a lot of these tribes are split up in two sections of the ravens and the eagles, and they have their own kind of emblem, and they used to not talk to each other or intermix with each other, but as obviously their tribe got decimated, they became a bit more lax about the intermingling of the ravens and, and the eagle tribes. But the features are so Nephilim-esque on these totem poles. I appreciate the subscriber for sending me this stuff. I really do. It's fascinating. It sent me down a rabbit hole. I thought it was definitely worth just sharing with you guys. If you want to, just look into this tribe some more, the Haida people. You can find websites dedicated to their history and their culture and the things they've got, their artworks, their homes, their oral traditions, their rituals. And it's a bit of lost history. Like I said, these people are gone practically. And they're kept alive in like a tourist sense now, it seems. And the artwork that gets made is a recreation of the stuff that is now decayed and disappeared by more modern artists. So it's fascinating. But yeah, the Nephilim-esque features are there. White skin, red lips, red nose, big wide-eyed features, blue-eyed features, animalistic, half-human, half-animal hybrids, and even the Hatman is mentioned here quite a lot. Anyway, guys, I think I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. I will be back with a live show on Sunday. I'll also be bringing another video every Friday to the patrons only. If you want to go on there and subscribe to the exclusive content, they find all the links down below. If you want to contribute to the book as well, you can find all the links down below. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening as always, and God bless.
I want you to get together.